Hey, folks, boys and girls and Z's and lady boys and such of all ages. I do believe it is Saturday. At least here it is Saturday. Where I am standing right this second is Saturday. But it is not Saturday in Bangkok, I do not believe. Because I guess, yeah, they are 13 hours different. Well, I don't know. It could be something. Yeah, time. I don't know. Don't mind me. My brain is still not here. That's what we're going to be talking about today anyway, is a whole reacclimatization and how much it can absolutely and utterly suck. So don't mind me if it doesn't seem like my brain is here, because honestly, my brain is not here. But hey, it doesn't matter. Again, as I always say, if you want to be successful in life, you gotta grind, you gotta do the work. It's not the idea, it's not the concept, it's not the team. It's whether or not you do the work day in, day out. Find a good idea with a good profit margin, do that thousands of times. What people always seem to ignore is the do that thousands of times. Every iteration of those thousands of times doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be good enough. And so that is what I am doing with you folks today. I'm giving you good enough. It's good enough, right? You folks just want to listen to somebody talk for an hour, and I can talk for an hour. So there we go. It's absolutely beautiful right now. As I've talked about, this is a great time to be in Maryland. Just this whole like May time frame. This is our spring time frame, and everything like really blooms and gets really, really green, and we have lots of different colors going on. We have like purple leaves on that maple, and you got the green, and you got the evergreen stuff, and you got flowers coming up, and you got the azaleas, rhododendrons or whatever. I guess azaleas are over there. You got the rhododendrons over here. Absolutely and utterly gorgeous. This is one thing that I do like with temperate climates, is you go through different seasons, and so things like really pop. I would actually argue that some of the climates that stay like with a more normal weather pattern all year round are more beautiful all year round. But in temperate climates like this, you really get those wow moments. You know, you just come home and all of a sudden all the flowers are in bloom and you're like, wow, that's just amazing. So we're walking out now. Everything seems a little bit wet because it was raining like hell today. Again, Maryland has had a very wet year. Again, it's interesting looking at things globally, is when we were over in Southeast Asia, one of the reasons I didn't think about the having a heat wave in Southeast Asia is because it's been so cool and wet here in Maryland. So it just didn't hit me that I should have Google searched heat wave Southeast Asia before I went to Thailand. But it's been very wet here, and so it was raining good part of the day, and you can kind of see all the water and everything there. But the sun has come out. We got some blue skies somewhere. There we go. Got some blue skies up there. So we'll be sitting out here talking today. We're not going to be doing the walk. We're not going to be doing too much walking and talking, simply because I still feel pretty zonked. I didn't wake up until like 1:30 this afternoon. It's so funny. Like, even when I was a teenager, I never slept that late. I'm just not one of those people to sleep that late. It's not like I woke up really early. I'm not a huge person until recently for waking up really early. But normally I do not sleep past noon, like, ever. But I didn't go to bed until 4 o'clock. I think it was 4 o'clock in the morning when I finally went to bed last night. So I was all asleep until about 1:30, and I just still feel like out of it. It's like that weird thing, like, I don't know. It's kind of like one of those weird things with travel, is you have these ideas of what will be difficult, what will be hard, and then there's the stuff that is actually difficult and hard. Because you'd figure, like, I don't know, because we got home on Thursday. In Maryland, we got home on Thursday. So we had Thursday, then a Thursday, we had Friday, we had today. So I kind of figured I'd be starting to feel normal about now. But in fact, I am not. In fact, I still feel very, very, very loopy. But that's just how it goes. And again, that's one thing, talking to you guys about adventure and travel and all that kind of stuff. One of the reasons why I like to talk to you folks as I do these things is so you can kind of get the real world experience. Because again, I see a lot of people, oh my gosh, Spaghetti Monster, bless them. I see a lot of people out there, and they will travel, you know, halfway around the world and then expect to be at work like the next day. And they have this idea like, oh, yeah, that'll work, that'll be fine. And you're just kind of sitting there thinking, I think that might be a wee bit more difficult than you realize. So if you hear me being all zonky, then you don't feel so bad. So anyways, let's get some fish food, feed the fish, because we got to get our fish all nice and big so that the snakes don't eat them. I was a little sad to see the snake out already. It's like you see that big old snake yesterday, and you're because a snake does eat fish. You don't really like the idea of the snake eating your nice, beautiful fish, but what are you gonna do? If you have a house in nature, can't complain when the snake eats fish. There we go. Get some fish food here, and then we'll go out and we'll start talking about reacclimatization and why it really sucks. But yeah, I feel zonky. My golly, I feel zonky. It's just kind of like, I just don't really feel here. It's like this weird feeling. Like, yeah, it's like my brain isn't fully engaged. It's kind of hard to explain. You get this every once in a while with travel and adventure and stuff. And it's just kind of like, I don't know. It's like your brain slips out of gear. If you drive like a manual car, and sometimes the transmission will shift out of gear and the engine kind of spins, but it's not actually moving the transmission. It's kind of how my brain feels sometimes. I don't know if that's a good thing. Feed some fishies for you. A nice view going on there. Oh, look at that. Fishies are happy to get some food. Okay, so with that, I suppose we have to talk today, right? We have to say something amazing, or at least vaguely useful. Because that's what I get paid for. That's what I get paid the big bucks for, is to talk about things that are vaguely curious. You will see, it is weird being back in Maryland. Got the sweatshirt on because it's nice out. But it's like 68 degrees, which is definitely not 104 degrees. And it is weird with things like perception. Because if it was like because it's been like 70, 72. So like when we left, if it would have been solidly 70, 72, that would be great. But the temperature kept fluctuating up or down. So then we go away where it's 100 degrees, and then we come back, and then 70 degrees seems cold. Kind of weird how that works. But anyways, hi, I'm Eli. My brain is still not here. Oh, yeah. But anyways, so let's talk about reacclimatization, because again, with all the kind of weird stuff I've done in my life, acclimatization and reacclimatization is just kind of one of those things that I do. It's one of those skills I have. I don't know if it's a skill. It's probably a skill I'm very piss poor at, but it's something I do nonetheless. Right, so I had the military service. I've had the backpacking around Europe. I had the backpacking around India, doing a lot of other travel, going off in the RV and all that kind of stuff. And so basically, the main thing we're talking about, acclimatization or reacclimatization. First thing to talk about is with acclimatization. What acclimatization is basically where your body gets used to being in a new environment. It gets used to new patterns. Again, one of the important things to realize in life is that your brain thinking is the most caloric intensive activity you can do. Other than maybe if you've got those big weightlifters on here. I'm not sure how bench pressing 300 pounds compares to thinking about a math problem. But just follow me here, right? And so basically the way that the human body tries to survive is, since the brain uses the most calories, or thinking uses the most calories, what the brain does is it tries to create its own little macros, or basically creates its own little scripts, so that it doesn't have to think very much. It has to think as little as possible. So basically that's why you start going into routines. You start doing things the exact same way all the time. You drive to work the same way. You make your coffee in the morning the same way. You shower the same way. You just fall into patterns. And basically everybody does it. And it's one of the ways that we learn to survive. And so the issue is when you go out and you go into completely new environments, the brain has to figure out new patterns. It has to figure out new ways of doing things. And so it means your brain has to think a lot. And whenever you use any muscle, at all, many times it's painful. And so when you go out into the world and you're going to get acclimated to a new environment, it can be a painful experience because the brain has to figure out new patterns, right? So like when I go to, like here in the United States, I mean, you don't think about it, but like I don't have to think really here in the United States about what food I eat. I know what food I can and cannot eat in the United States, and it's not something that I really think about anymore. Like I walk into my kitchen and I pull out the food and I eat the food. There are rules that I have in my brain, right, for what I can and cannot eat. So I don't do well with onions. Right? I don't do well with nuts. I don't do well with beans or whatever else. And so basically I've set up my kitchen so that I don't have to worry about those things. So I just reach in the refrigerator, I find whatever I want to eat, and I eat it, right? Because all these patterns and all these things have already been developed. Well, so I go off to Thailand and I go off to Cambodia. And as you learn in Cambodia, you can't always trust everything you eat, even when you think it's normal. And so the thing is, so like we go off to Thailand especially, and we no longer have a kitchen. So normally I walk into my kitchen and I get whatever food that I'm going to eat. Well, in Thailand, we didn't have a kitchen. We had to go out and basically we had to eat street food, or we had to eat at the restaurants. And so when we go to the restaurants, we take a look at the food, and the food basically isn't like the stuff that we have in the United States. It's close enough, same, but really freaking different, right? You know, you got pad thais, and you got fried rice, and you got congee, and you got this, and you got that, and you got the... And so the brain is sitting there trying to figure out what it thinks that it can eat. What can I eat in this new environment? So like here in the United States, I mean, just to give you a hint, so here in the United States, every morning I wake up and I have oatmeal. Whether morning is at 5 o'clock in the morning or 1:30 in the afternoon today, you know, the first meal of the day is I have oatmeal. And this is just what I do every day, right? So then I go to like Thailand, trying to figure out what I can eat, what I can't eat. They don't have oatmeal. Oatmeal doesn't seem to exist there for whatever reason. And so I get into the pattern of eating fruit, yogurt, and muesli. Right? It's a new thing, but it takes the brain. The brain has to figure out what it thinks it can eat in this new environment, and so you have to figure out how are you going to eat in this new environment. You have to figure out what are your patterns going to be in this new environment. So, like here in the United States, especially like in Maryland right now, it gets warmer throughout the day. So the end of the day is coldest, and the beginning of the day is coldest, and so you want to be out when it's warmest. Right? You want to be out. So basically, you know, when I'm here in the United States, I toddle along until 10 o'clock in the morning, and then from 10 o'clock in the morning to, let's say, 3 or 4 is when I normally do my worky type stuff, and then after 4, I start settling down. Well, you go to Thailand, it's 105 degrees before the heat index, and guess what? You don't necessarily want to be out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so you reshift how everything does. This is how you do things. So there, I did more stuff between like 6 to 10 is when I do a lot of activity, and then afterwards, let's say 4 to whenever we went to bed. So the middle of the day is actually when you would try to relax the most, because it was just so bloody hot. And there's all these things like language. So you go out there and you go to have conversations, and people don't necessarily understand English, or they understand English very little. So basically the idea with acclimatizing is you go out into this new environment and you figure out how to get by. You figure out the things that you can say, you figure out the things you can't say, you figure out the new patterns, and this is a very, very, very painful process. It just is, right? You know, when you're young and adventurous or whatever, it's exciting. And again, I think that's one thing that gets lost on people. Just because it's exciting and cool and amazing and a once-in-a-lifetime experience doesn't mean it's not painful. Right? Because that's what a lot of people do, is they go out there and they have these adventures. There's a lot of pain to the adventure. Again, like I say, cellulitis, all right, there's a lot of pain to the adventure. And then they sit there and they're like, oh, there must be something wrong with me. Oh, you know, there just must be something wrong with me, because I hear Eli go out there and have I hear all these people go out there and have these amazing times, and I'm just sitting here being miserable. Again, what you have to remember is how the human brain works. The human brain is very good remembering good times, happy times, moments that make you smile and laugh. It's actually really bad remembering pain. So when you hear people talk about all these stories, you do have to realize that many times that they're not telling you about all the painful, horrible crap, and they're only telling you about the good, exciting stuff. Right. Again, and that's why I try to balance out almost all the stories that I talk about. Right. I talk about when I was 23 years old, and I was the network engineer, the field engineer or whatever, and I had the direct line to the travel department, and I was doing $500,000 build outs and all that kind of stuff. And I do tell you folks that because that is real. That is part of my life. But I also try to balance that with my first nickname in that job was CK. CK? Why'd they call you CK? Computer killer. Because 4 days into the job, I got shipped off to Pittsburgh, not knowing what the hell I was going to do. The Pittsburgh office, not knowing what the hell I was going to do. I was supposed to go there to do a very simple job of basically swapping out something called a switch. Wasn't supposed to do any real technical work at all. Basically, unbox this switch. What I was supposed to do, I was supposed to unscrew the broken switch from the rack. Screw the new switch into the rack, plug in all the cables, call the datacom department, and make sure all the lights lit up. And that's all my job was. And if all the lights didn't light up, then I simply unscrewed the new switch, put in the old switch, and shipped it back. Like, I was supposed to do no work, right? Then I get there, and they're like, great, computer technician. We have so much work to do. And I was like, what? And I got named CK because, like, the first 4 computers I touched died. Like, really, they just died. This was back like when Windows 98 was actually in the production environment, was being used in businesses. And yeah, all the computers I touched died. And so I try to tell you these things so you folks realize that there is both the joy and the happiness of being a 23-year-old doing $500,000 build-outs. And there's being called CK because every computer you touch died. Again, like I say, going through ND or whatever, amazing experience. And then sitting in the shower, crapping on myself because I was so sick. Right. But that's one thing to realize with going out there and doing things is especially a lot of young people nowadays, they have so few good mentors. It really is sad. They have so few people. Like, people's egos are so small anymore. They're so small anymore that they can't admit to when they had pain, that they can't admit to when they had mistakes, when they can't admit to when every fucking thing just went sideways, right? Their egos are so small, they always have to talk about how good they are, how impressive they are. Well, when they did this, it was amazing, right? And so the problem is for a lot of young folks out there is you go out there into these worlds and you're getting, acclimatized to a new environment, and you're sitting there and you're like wondering why the hell is it so painful for you? Again, you look at all these pictures and videos on Facebook and what your friends and all these people are doing, and it seems like all that's going on is that they're having an amazing time. And what you don't see is all the bad stuff, right? Because think about that. I mean, just coming back from Thailand, I could have edited my videos in Thailand to just seem like I was the most amazing person in the world, right? I could have edited those to seem like I was the king adventurer. This is, how cool I am. Everything goes perfect, right? But again, I edited them differently. I edited them how they really were so that you folks could see, like I say, what the real world is. I got to see Angkor Wat, which is amazing. Angkor Wat, Bayan, all of that stuff. Amazing, mind-blowing. And then I ate kofti or whatever, and that was horrible, horrible. Do not eat Indian cheese stew in Cambodia. Right. But anyway, so that's one thing with acclimatization. Just do realize when you go out there and you're going to go do whatever adventure it is, that it will be painful because your brain is trying to figure out the new patterns that it can get into. Because again, like I say, when we're in Thailand, we're in Bangkok, we did fall into new patterns. There was, at first you're figuring out what restaurants you can go to and all that, and then you find the restaurant that you like, and then you just keep going back there. Every morning and basically every lunch, there was one restaurant we went to. Why? We could trust the food. We had the food there. Every time we had the food there, we felt good. Like we went to a place across the street. We had some pad thai there. Belly didn't feel too good. Again, didn't get sick. Didn't get like Siam Reap sick. Didn't feel too good. So just going back, right? So you go out there and you acclimatize, and basically it's getting into the patterns, and it's allowing your body to get used to things like the temperature, allowing your body to get used to the weather, your body to get used to all of these different things, right? And it's a process. I think in the military, the 6 weeks, I don't know, the military folks out there could say, I know when I was in the Army, they were actually talking about that. Because, when they do ship you off to where the hell ever, different weather patterns, even in the United States. And so I think when I was in the Army standards at the time stated it took like 6 weeks to acclimatize to a new environment, like a new physical environment. Again, with the heat or the cold or any of that kind of stuff. Because not only is there a lot of stuff with the brain, but there's a lot of stuff with just how your body interacts with the world. There's a lot of, there's a lot of activity that your body does that you don't think about, like moving blood to the extremities and all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of training that your body goes through that you're not really necessarily thinking about. And so that's one of the things that they were teaching us in the Army, is that you have to be careful within like that 6 week period, because your body doesn't necessarily know how to react to the environment yet. So if you're from Massachusetts, Maine, and then you go to, Arizona where it's 100 degrees, even your body will simply work better in 3 months than it does now. Like even if you follow the right procedures, even if you drink your gallon of water a day and you do this and you do that and do the other thing, in 3 months you will simply feel better because your body figures out how all the stuff is supposed to work. Right. So again, one of those things to be thinking about is just it takes about like I say, back in the day, I think they told us it was about 6 weeks, and then your body comes through. And so that's the normal thing. So that's the acclimatization process, and that's what everybody always thinks about, right? If I'm going to go from cold to warm, it's going to take me a while to acclimate to the new environment. If I'm going to go from the Western world to the Eastern world, it's going to take me a while to acclimate to the environment. If I'm going to go to the Eastern world to the Western world, it's going to take me a while to acclimate to the environment. If I'm going to go from civilian life to military life, it'll take me a while to acclimate. These are all things that we're used to, right? So talking about acclimatizations, like most of you guys are like, yeah, no crap, Eli. Wow, I must really like to listen to Eli talk, because he just says like just the stupidest crap. He's just been blabbering on for like 20 minutes on like, hey, no shit, Eli, right? Well, here's the thing that really screws you up, and here's the thing that I don't really find a lot of people talk about a lot. Because again, maybe it may just say a lot about my generation of adults that they don't actually go out and do very much, and so they really can't talk about it. But one of the biggest problems that I see, and one of the things that very, very few people really talk about, is what a bitch it is to reacclimate back to your original environment. And I would actually argue, hands down, reacclimatization is 1,000 times harder than acclimatization. But again, it's one of those things that very few people talk about realistically, honestly. And so I think that's why it causes a lot of folks a lot of pain when it really shouldn't. Because again, one of the big problems that I see in life with most people, and why most people suffer so much pain, is because they feel things. They honestly, naturally feel things, but then they feel like they shouldn't feel those things. Right? I shouldn't feel this way. So you feel a way that's already painful for whatever reason, but it's not too bad. It's handleable because it's the human condition, right? Our brains really aren't set up to give us more pain than we can handle. It's just how it is. Again, once you get to a certain level of pain, dopamine and endorphins or whatever else dump into the system, right? Once the lion catches you and shakes you, the brain knows you're fucked. And so it just dumps in a lot of stuff and says, well, enjoy the ride until you get eaten, right? But the brain normally doesn't give you more pain than you can handle. But the issue that I see is a lot of people in life, what happens is they go through the normal suffering process that they should normally be able to handle. But then what makes it so much worse is then they say, well, I shouldn't be suffering. Again, this whole thing, first world problems. We'll talk about first world problems later. But anytime I hear anybody say first world problems, I just want to beat the ever-loving shit out of them in the middle of the first world. I just want to take them to Times Square, the epicenter of the first world, and then break their bones. And say, hey, look, how are those first world problems doing for you? Yeah, just because you're in the first world doesn't mean your problems don't matter. Doesn't mean you don't suffer. I mean, again, put it all into context. I mean, don't be like, oh, I'm suffering worse than a Cambodian with stomach flu. No, you're probably not. But it doesn't mean that your problems aren't real and that your suffering isn't real. But there's this idea, and that's a thing I think that causes so many people so much pain, is this idea that I should not be suffering. Again, this whole thing, there's a Cambodian with stomach flu. How can I complain about my paper cut? Because my paper cut fucking hurts. I will complain about my paper cut. You know why? Because to me, that hurts. Again, I can't suffer for a Cambodian. I can't suffer for myself, right? But one of the big problems that I see is that, again, there's this, the people go through pain and they go through suffering, but then they feel like, I shouldn't. It's wrong. It shows my weakness. And then they just start beating up on themselves so much more. And you're like, you do realize, 10% of your suffering is what you're actually suffering through. Legitimately. 90% of your suffering is you beating up on yourself because you don't feel like you should be suffering. Right? And so that's one of the problems that you see with reacclimatization is a lot of people that come back and they go through a lot of suffering, but they don't feel like they should be suffering. They feel like it's wrong to suffer or to be miserable because they're back in their normal environment and they don't understand what's going on. And so it compounds the issues. So one of the big things is, again, with the brain, it's how much you beat up on yourself, really, right? So if you're going out in the wide world, if you're going out, like I say, into military service, or if you're going out to Asia, if you're going out to backpack through Europe, right? You intrinsically know that you're about to suffer. You know that your worldview is about to get turned on its head. You know you're going to be eating weird food. You know the weather is going to be different. You know all of these things. So you know that you're going to have to get to acclimatize to that new environment. And so you put up all of your mental guards knowing that you're going to have to go into this. So you go into that environment, you go, I know this is going to be difficult, and I know this is going to be an adventure, and I know I'm going to power through, right? So you have all your mental guards up, you have all of those mental protections because you're going to go out there and do something amazing. Well, then you go out there and you dodge tuk-tuks and you get cellulitis and you're vomiting in the middle of Siam Reap and you're doing all of these things, right? And then you think, I can't wait to finally get home. I can't wait to get home to normalcy. Normalcy. Again, failed normal. Normalcy, right? But anyways, and so there's this whole thing like, okay, I'm going to get home. Again, I've dealt with this with the military service. I dealt with this with backpacking around the world, dealt with it. And you have this idea, I'm going to get home. I'm going to get back to where I'm comfortable. I left where I was comfortable, went out and had these amazing adventures, and now I'm going to go back to where I am comfortable. And so you remember home as being comfortable. Your bed is comfortable, and you have a TV, and you have all of these things. You have food that you can trust and all that kind of stuff. Well, the thing is, what a lot of people don't realize is then you come home, and home is how home was before. But what you don't realize is that you have actually changed. In a lot of different ways, right? Because while you've been traveling, while you've been adventuring, while you've been militarying or whatever the hell else you've been doing, your brain has literally been rewiring itself to make that new environment normal. So when you come back to the old environment that you remember being normal and comfortable and all these things, the brain has rewritten so many of its patterns and so many of the things that it's done that when you come back to home, to normal, for some reason you can't cope with it very well. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense years, right? And that's one thing, like when I came out of the military, right? And so I was 21, come out of the military, and I was I was happy to get out of the military. Okay, that time of my that thing in my life is done. I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna go to college, and I'm gonna be around cute girls. I'm going to drink alcohol. I'm gonna have fun, right? That was my thought. I'm gonna go out there, and I've got my college fund, and I'm gonna be able to be a young person like all of these other young people, and really have fun. But then here's the thing, and what you don't think about is your brain has been rewritten. So I go back to college, I go to college, right? And I'm 21, and then I'm hanging around with all these other 21-year-old kids, and they're all complete fucking idiots. Like, just worthless fucking idiots. Like, you sit there, and you have dealt with life and death, and you have spent countless days, supporting your buddy who's going through whatever process it is in the mind after you actually do kill somebody, and all of this stuff. And then you go to a normal college, and you have people crying and bitching and moaning about boyfriends and girlfriends and professors and all that kind of stuff. I just remember, like, the one time I just, you're just sitting there, and you're like, you're trying to be like the normal college kid. And then I remember I had a friend of mine come up, and she was bitching about the professor, and I can't believe this professor gave me the grade or whatever. And again, this was before I was hyper authoritarian, right? Before I was empire. And I was like, oh, what did this professor do? Yeah, fuck the professor. What did the professor do? It's like, yeah, gave me the grade. I was like, oh, why is that? And she was like, well, because of my homework. She dinged me like 25% of the grade was the homework. It's like, oh, what did they? Was this like a chemistry class, and they dinged you on your grammar or something? Fucking, I hate it when they do that. She was like, no, I didn't turn any of it in. It's like, and you're just looking at this person who's getting a free ride because their parents are paying the fucking bill, right? They don't have to work. All they have to do is school. And it's like, and again, I don't care if you don't do your homework and you get a D. I don't care, right? I'm not trying to be all like superior, but like, you don't do your homework, you get the grade that you deserve because you don't do your homework, and yet you have the gall to complain about how your professor is a piece of crap because you didn't do the homework that was assigned, and they gave you the grade because of that, and you're just like, what the hell, right? But that was a thing, like coming out, like I say, like military service, and like I had this idea of like what college was going to be like. Oh, isn't it going to be so nice to get away from fucking, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, isn't it going to be so nice to get to sanity, like not worried about this shit, right? And then you get there, and you're just like, what the hell is wrong with these people? Right? And that's what they don't tell you about. Again, the acclimatization. You go off to basic training, you go off to AIT, you go off to duty station. You know this is going to be hard. You know this is going to be difficult. Your brain is set up for that. Your brain isn't set up for leaving that and going to college and looking around and thinking all of your peers are complete and utter worthless idiots. Whiny, worthless idiots. They're sitting there like, you're like, you know what I did for my college fund? you know, some of us, our parents aren't paying the bill. Anyways, and it's like, yeah, how do you deal with that? And that's what they don't talk about. But or like I say, like coming back from Europe or the other travels, and it's like everything is so hard. Like when I came back from India, in India everything was so hard. Oh my golly, India's India. India's a place. India is India, right? And so every day for 4 months, it's just this constant bombardment. Just, you're never, as as the Indians say, you are never alone in India. It was a type of thing, like I went onto a train car, and I talk about this every once in a while. I went into a train car out of Bombay. And I got in this train car, and the train car was basically empty. It's like, oh, it's an empty train car. thank you. Because especially as American, we have like a 3-foot bubble. Like we have this idea there's supposed to be like a 3-foot bubble from us to anybody else. That's our comfort zone. And so in India, you don't get fucking 3 feet. You get 3 inches, you're a happy boy. I mean, like it is hard to explain how tight they pack people in. I mean, you were just like in some of these things. But anyways, I get on this train car. And there's like almost nobody on the train car. Train cars, you know, whatever. A couple more people come in. And then the weirdest fucking thing in the world, like I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden there's this train car. And then like all 9 or 10 people or whatever, like sit right in my little section and like are shoulder to shoulder with me. And I'm looking around. The rest of this fucking train car is empty. The rest of the train car is empty. Except for I'm now shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of freaking India. And it's like, what is wrong with you? It's empty. The one time I get my 3 feet of space. The one time my 3 foot of space should have been easy. And yeah, because they're all used to being packed together. So when I guess they're not packed together, they feel like they should be. It's like, oh, all right. But again, you go through all that stuff and it's like constantly bombarding your brain. And you think, oh, I can't wait till I get back to the States and all that kind of stuff. And then you get back to the States and then it's quiet. And then you don't have 3 feet of space. You just have all the space, right? And then the weird thing is your brain has gotten so used to people being packed around you all the time that it actually becomes difficult to deal, right? Because you're like, right? And so these are some of the things to be thinking about. And a lot of people don't think about how reacclimatization can be a very, very, very painful process. And again, because people don't think about it, they don't give themselves the time and the environment, the comfort level to actually cope with it, because they feel like they shouldn't have to cope with it. And then this can cause lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of pain. Right? And not only that, but the other thing too is like once you go out into the wider world, it really changes you in different ways, and in ways you may not be expecting. Not just through the patterns, but you go out there and you see how people do things very differently than what you're used to. So whatever your environment is, you know, whether you live in Cambodia or whether you live in the United States, whatever, you know, you're used to seeing your world and you think of your world as normal. This is normal and everything else is abnormal. And then you go out in the world and you see how a billion other people do things. And it changes you. It changes your perspective on what you think is important. Right? You know, a lot of times one of the good things with travel and adventure is it puts you into these new environments and you can see what you actually like and what you actually enjoy. And you may find out that the things that you do, you've only been doing them because you didn't know there were any other options. You didn't know there were other possibilities. So if you don't know there are other possibilities, then what you're doing now seems pretty good. But then as soon as you realize that there are other possibilities out there, it really kind of starts futzing with your brain. Right? You know, is this really what I want to do in life? Again, I mean, you see that I was in India. I was in this place called Varkala. Varkala 14 years ago was amazing. I have no idea how Varkala is now. Because again, in India, a lot of places, as soon as they become popular, they get built up. And so Varkala 14 years ago was amazing. I have no idea what it's like now, because it was starting to get popular then. So now it's probably not the Varkala I know, but Varkala was just great. But you know, I remember I was at this restaurant, you know, way into the night, drinking good beer, good what was it? What was that beer? Anyways, good beer. Actually, yeah, not good beer. Beer they had. The beer that was good because the environment it is in. Any beer where you're sitting with a warm ocean breeze blowing in and the waves crashing below, any beer you drink in that environment's gonna be good. Anyways, so I was sitting there. Things were closing down. And I was talking to the owner or the manager, whatever the hell it was, for the little restaurant we were in, and somehow the question came up to what else this person would want. You know, like what does an Indian want, right? So if you own a restaurant in India, are you trying to create a bigger restaurant? Are you trying to create a chain of restaurants? Like what are you trying to accomplish in life, right? And I was talking to this guy, and all he had was his little beachfront restaurant. And then when his beachfront restaurant closed at the end of the day, at the end of the night, really, he would throw out his little rattan mat, or whatever it was. He had this little mat, and he would just sleep on the ground in front of his restaurant. That was it. That was his life. Wake up in the morning, cook and do all the stuff for the restaurant, and then at night he'd throw out his little rattan mat, and he'd fall asleep on the ground. Sitting there talking like, oh, do you want a bigger restaurant? Do you want this, that? No. And I said, well, don't you want any more in life? Because he was like, well, I've got my restaurant, and I've got my mat, I've got the weather. It's like, don't you want any more in life? And I just remember him looking at me with that look on his face as he said, why? And he wasn't being snarky, and he wasn't being hipster, and he wasn't being all these other things. He was just saying, yeah, I've got my restaurant, I got my job, makes me some money, I got my rattan mat, I got beautiful weather. Why would I want any more than this in life? And again, I mean, you think about some of these computer scientists, or you think about some of these startup people, you think about so many of these folks out there arguing about their 401k plans, and imagine them sitting in that environment with the ocean and the weather and all of that, with a person honestly looking in the eye and saying, why do I need anything more in life than my job and a rattan mat and a beautiful environment? And you think about how that might screw with people. I mean, again, imagine if you're one of those poor schmucks that all they've worried about all their life is a 4.0 GPA. They got their 4.0 GPA, and then they went to college, and they did all the things that they're supposed to do, and yet they still feel kind of miserable. And then they have this person with nothing. Like you could buy everything this guy has for $1,000. Content as hell. Right? And then think about that. Think about when you come back to your condo and your fancy car and your job with the cool position or whatever. And you're like, this is all kind of meaningless, isn't it? Right? And again, those are the things that you don't think about when you come back. Is you think about, oh yeah, I can't wait to get back to my job, but I can't wait to get back to this, and I can't wait to get back to that, I can't wait to back to the other thing. And then you get in your really nice car, that nice car you took like 3 years to save up for. You always dreamed of that car, and you sit in it, and it's so clean and so quiet and so perfect. You're like, damn, I miss those tuk-tuks. Right? So one of the things that I will warn you folks about when you're going to go off into that wide world is going off into the wide world is actually not the hard part. Going off in the wide world is not the hard part. It's the coming home. I would argue hands down, coming home is what is actually most difficult. And one of the reasons it's so difficult is because you don't expect it to be. You have these ideas of going back. And then again, like I say, I think it's just a very fundamental level. Your brain really does rewire itself where you're out there in the world. And then you come back and you find, one, it's just not as easy and it's just not what you remember. And then two, a lot of times you find it's not what you actually want. Like you wanted this because that is all you have ever known, right? Within all the options that you had 5 options and you picked the best one. And then you go out in the world and you find out there's a Walmart of options. And you're like, oh, well, I picked the best options out of the 5 that I saw in front of me. I didn't realize there were literally like 10,000 options out there. Now what am I going to do, right? So anyways, those are some thoughts on acclimatization and reacclimatization. Be careful of reacclimatization. I've been through it a lot. It sucks. Thankfully now this isn't too bad. Because I was only gone for 3 weeks. But especially, like I say, once you get out there, once you get to the point, I would argue it's somewhere around that month to 6 week mark, that's when you have to be in careful the reacclimatization process, because you've been gone long enough for your brain to start to rewire itself, so that when you come back, because again, if it's less than if it's less than a month, you're still in that vacation mode. Your mind doesn't really start to rewire itself. Your mind knows, okay, this is vacation. This is Disney World. I'm going to go to Disney World, but the brain doesn't generally rewire itself when you go to Disney World, right? You go to Disney World, you have a fun time, you drink, you play with the kids or whatever, then you come back, it doesn't rewire itself. What I would argue is it's got to be like a month, somewhere between that month to 2 month mark, where the brain starts to think, oh, this is the new normal. And so if this is the new normal, then I have to start rewriting myself in order to be able to cope with this new normal. Because again, if you go off to Disneyland or you go off somewhere for a vacation, your brain can work overtime. And it's not really that big a deal. Because again, it's a week, 2 weeks, a month. Yes, it's burning more energy than it normally does. But again, for a month, the brain can handle that. The brain knows it can handle it. Once you hit over that month mark, that's when the brain starts going, I can't do this for a lifetime. I can think a lot for a short amount of time. But when we start talking about, months and years and decades, the brain goes, I can't keep thinking at this level constantly. And so that's where I would say that the brain starts rewriting all of those little routines that you have. And then it's at the point where the brain starts rewriting the routines is, I would say, at least for my brain, that you can't have too many routines in the brain. Right? It's kind of like, RAM or cache or something like that. There's only so many routines that the brain can cache. And so the thing is, the longer that you're out, the more new routines get put into that cache, which means the old routines get flushed. And so the longer you're out there creating all of these new little routines, then when you come back, all of the old routines that you have basically been flushed, or at least at the very least have been put in like long-term storage, and that's where it becomes more painful and more difficult to bring them back from. Would be my thought there. That would definitely be my thought. Wow, it is cold. Like my fingers are actually cold. I'm like shivering a tiny bit right now. It's like, ooh, it's cold. But I actually like this. I like this particular weather. See, this weather, I can go do a 10 or 15 mile hike in, and I'm not going to die. Yay. Oh, I do like this weather, though. This is the kind of weather that's very, very nice. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts for today. Acclimatization and reacclimatization. And again, it's so much in life, so many of the things that are most difficult in life are the things that you don't think are going to be difficult. And again, the big thing that I would say is just give yourself a little compassion. Give yourself a little bit of the caring that you feel like the rest of the world should get. Because, like I say, the biggest problem, and it's one of my pet peeves. It's one of my pet peeves, and I truly, truly, to the bottom of my heart, I'm not simply saying this to be bombastic or whatever, I'm saying this truly, is one of the phrases I hate the most is first world problems. Because when you say you have a problem and then you write it off as a first world problem, what you're really doing is you're saying you're not allowed to suffer simply because some poor schmuck in the world has it worse than you. Well, here's the thing. Even if you're a poor person in Cambodia with 2 legs cut off, there's still going to be somebody worse than you. Right? And I'm not saying you dwell on your suffering. I'm not saying you martyr yourself in your suffering. I'm not saying you have suffered more than anybody else in the world on your suffering. But just accept your suffering a little bit. That's a huge thing that I see, is I see so many people that are suffering, and it would be fine if they accepted it, figured out a coping mechanism, and moved on. But so many people just won't do that. Again, if you look at it, I did a video on depression a year and a half ago now. So like around December. of December of 2014. If you go back to Eli Computer Guy Live, I did a video on geek depression because I was feeling very depressed, very situationally depressed, as I called it. It's not a chemical imbalance. It's that I have been kicked in the nutsack quite a bit. And life was not going how I thought it was going to go. At all. At all. Spaghetti Monster came down and said, hey, you know your plans. Not doing that, right? And so I was going through issues. And now you may look at it, and again, a lot of people might be snarky at that. It's like, okay, well, Eli, obviously has enough money for a house like that, and a pond, and all these things. Eli is happily married. Eli has vehicles. Eli has a career and a job that's actually world famous, whether or not anybody seems to want to accept that or not. How could this person be depressed? But here is the thing. I don't deal with all that stupidness. I knew that I was depressed. I was depressed for reasons. Yes, I have money and a beautiful wife and a great house and all those things. But my beautiful wife had also had 2 cancers. Coming to that point where we realized that we weren't going to have kids. A big house back there, dealing with a construction project that went sideways 9 ways from Sunday. And, having a dog that was sick and ended up dying and all that. And I was depressed. Truly and honestly depressed. And here was the thing. I accepted that. I didn't think I'm a bad person for being depressed. I didn't say, oh, look at my first world problem. How can somebody like me be depressed? I looked at myself in the mirror and went, well, fuck. Look at this fine mess we got ourselves into. What are we going to do about it? And so I sat there and I looked at my life. And I looked at why I was depressed, and I looked at why I wasn't feeling good, and I looked at was I going to get out of this? Is this something that just because of the construction project, maybe that was too stressful? And then what I realized at that point was that no, there were some very fundamental issues that my life, I'd gone. I mean, the plan, there was a plan. Plan went along. But that where I had gotten to didn't get me what I thought it was going to get me, right? Got me some things, got me a house, got me a pond, got me a beautiful wife, but that's not the entirety of life. That's not everything that would make me happy, right? And so, like I said, I did that video, and so, started looking at things, trying to figure things out, and that's where I realized, again, like I say, this adventuring part of my life, I kind of compartmentalized this adventuring part of my life away, because I figured I was going to have this normal, suburbanish life, this startup business person life, and what I realized, it sounds stupid to say, but that money is not the end-all be-all for me. Again, money is valuable. Don't get me wrong, I don't need a house this size, but I do need a house, right? Money is valuable, but that's the thing that I looked at is like when I was there, because, especially then for Eli the Computer Guy, I was getting more and more offers. There's a lot of money on the table. There's a lot of money on the table, and then I looked at it, and it was like, okay, I'm going to do all this more work. I'm going to get all more stress to do this, and I can make another $200,000. I can get an additional $200,000. And then I looked at it and it was like, well, what's that $200,000? How is that extra $200,000 going to make me any more happy? I'm going to be bouncing around all over the country, like not fun stuff, like bouncing on to do seminars or whatever, and then bouncing out, and that's going to be tiring and exhausting. I'm going to do this and that and the other. It's going to be tiring and exhausting. I can see how all of this additional work, and I can see where the path I'm on is going to give me more stress, and I can see how it's going to give me significantly more money. But where I lose the connection is how that significantly more money is going to make my life better. I see how I'm more stressed. I see how I have more cash. But I'm missing the step where that cash actually gives me a better life. And that's where I looked at things. That's where I shut down the daily blog, the talk show that I was doing at the time. And again, I had $60,000 per yearly sponsorship at that point. They said no to. This isn't like they were actually writing checks. I said, no. And that's where my wife and we got the travel trailer. And then we traveled around the country for 9 months. And had a fun time. And then coming, and now, I look at it, it's a year and a half later, and I'm pretty damn happy. Again, I still got first world problems. I still got issues, right? I still got frustrations in life. I'm not saying everything's perfect, but I'm not depressed. I mean, I go and I look at my house, and there's work I have to do in my house, and it's like I'm frustrated. But it's not that depression. It's not that, what the hell am I doing? It's not that feeling of, is this really what the hell the next 30 years of my life is going to be like? It's like looking at it and going, is this really what the next day of my life is going to be like? Oh, well. After we get done with that day, we get to do something fun. But that's where I see with so many people is they don't accept the pain that they're going through. They don't accept the suffering that they're going through. And therefore, it makes it so much worse because, one, you're going through the pain anyway, so you already have that suffering. Two, you then start beating up on yourself for suffering because you don't feel that you should, so that adds even more to your suffering. And then three, the worst part is since you don't accept that you're miserable or that you're suffering, that you don't do anything to cope with it. You don't figure out a new way. You don't figure out a new path because you're so focused on the fact that you shouldn't be suffering anyway. Why are you suffering? You make $100,000 and some odd a year. It is absolutely ridiculous that you should be suffering. Well, you're lonely. Everybody you work with in the office is an asshole. You're really not sure how the hell you're supposed to find a significant other in this modern world. You're stressed all the time. And so, yeah, you make a lot of money or whatever, but the rest of your life is pretty miserable. Oh, no, but you make money, therefore you should be happy. Well, maybe. Maybe you need to find another job. Anywho, those are my thoughts today. But anytime anybody says first world problems, I hate the whole thing of first world problems. Because like I say, anybody who says first world problems, all I want to do is I want to drag them to the middle of Times Square, the middle of New York City Times Square, and then I want to just break every major bone in their body. And then go, hey, look, you have a first world problem. Right? You're like, oh my God, Eli, what the hell's wrong with you? No, but think about it. Well, you're in the first world. You're like in the epicenter of the first world. It doesn't mean you can't suffer. I have real suffering. But yeah, so many people are like, oh. Again, I mean, think about it. If you're in Cambodia and your family is poor, but you have a close, tight-knit community where people care about each other, you know what your place in the community is. You know that if you have a problem, you have somebody to go to. The family is still tight. The family is still intact. You still have very devout religious faith. And you're poor. Are you actually worse off than the schmuck who's getting paid $150,000 a year, but literally, in Seattle, but literally his little startup company is a block away from his condo and literally works 14 hours a day and is proud of working 14 hours a day, so doesn't see anybody except for everybody that's in the office. And because so many people in the tech world are a little bit more than a little bit autistic, probably a lot of the people in the office are complete and utter assholes. So the people that he hangs around with all the time, 14 hours a day, are basically assholes, and doesn't know how they're going to find a significant other because everybody is working 14 hours a day, right? Because if I'm working 14 hours a day and the girls that I'm going after are working 14 hours a day, we're all kind of stressed and pissy at the end of the day, and then goes back. So is that person making $150,000 a year as a technology professional in one of the epicenters of the world for technology, is that person actually have a better life than that poor fucking Cambodia? Again, I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just throwing it. Again, that little guy with a rattan mat. That guy throwing out his little rattan mat. So funny to laugh at him. And he's happy. He's fucking happy. He looked me in the square again. I do that whole square in the eye thing, like looking people in the eye. Like, okay, I'm looking for the bullshit here. And again, anybody who's ever talked with me, especially like say with mentorship meetings or whatever, I'll be like, okay, let's cut the shit. What's really going on here? And I'm telling you, I looked at that little guy in the eye. I looked him straight in the eyeball, and he really was like, "Why do I need any more than this?" And so again, a lot of people out there, successful, should be happy. First world problem. But again, and that's one of the things like with the whole concept of first world problems. What if first world problems are actually worse than many of what you would consider the third world problems? Again, why is physical suffering worse than mental suffering? Right. It is something to think about. It's something to think about. Again, you go to Costa Rica. They're supposed to be like happy people, right? Or Bhutan, the gross domestic happiness. Maybe poor, but they're happy. And again, that's one of those things when you go out there into the world, you start to see. And you start to see how people actually do things differently. And then you start to think, am I doing it right? Because again, that's a huge ego. It's a huge ego, especially like I say in the United States. There's this idea that I am right, that I am doing it perfectly, and everybody else is slightly screwed up. And you kind of go out there, and you start to think, maybe. I'm not saying I'm not right. I'm not saying that I'm right. But maybe I need to change my opinion to a more correct opinion. But anyways, that is a thought for the day. Because I'm actually getting cold. Really, oh my God, I'm starting to like shiver a little bit. It's like not horribly cold. It's not horribly cold. But again, when you're used to 100 and some odd degrees, and it's like 68 out, or maybe 65, yeah, it's definitely feeling colder. So I will leave you with that today. As far as the next trip goes, starting to plan, starting to look, starting to plan, starting to figure it out. Like I say, tomorrow or the next day or whenever it is, I don't sleep till 1:30 in the afternoon. I gotta go out and check the travel trailer and all that to make sure it still looks good. And we gotta figure out, like I say, I need to talk with my wife. I would like to take the travel trailer out for a little bit, for at least a few day trip before we go out on the big trip. So I'm not sure. There's Gettysburg that's around here, which is like an hour some odd away. That might be a nice place to go because my wife likes to bike. And so Gettysburg is a beautiful place for biking. So again, there's Gettysburg, or there's Ohiopyle up in the Laurel Highlands. That's a little farther away. That's like 3 hours away, but that's like a beautiful area. So I need to talk with her because I think I would like to do like maybe like a week before we leave, just to make sure everything's tested out and good. But if not a week, at least a few days. So we'll have to figure that out. But yeah, there we go. So anyways, kind of like we ended the video yesterday. It's not blabbering. It's not blathering. It's not blabbering. It's just as Eli kind of just wanders off. So Eli just kind of sort of stops talking because he's in that little blissed out. It is so weird, like I say. I feel weird. My wife was talking about that. I guess she's back to normal. She woke up at like 5 o'clock this morning and went bicycle riding, got back into her fitness routine. So she's like, she forced herself to get back into the routine. So the first night we were back, she fell asleep like by like midnight or something. And then yesterday she went to bed like 10 o'clock. I obviously did not. I stayed up till 3 or 4 in the morning the first night and 4 o'clock in the morning yesterday. But I don't know if I really want to force myself back into routine. Again, there's this whole idea of like forcing yourself to do stuff. I don't know what it is. I don't know. It's like going to be 40 or just I feel like I've proven the things that I need to prove in life. Like, I don't want to force myself anymore. You know what? I'm just going to let my body do what my body does. And we'll see how it works. Maybe this is the new pattern. Maybe the most healthy pattern for Eli is to sleep till 1:30 every day. I don't know. I'm not saying it is, but maybe. She would not be happy. My wife would be like, I'm not happy with that. Well. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how long it takes me to get back into the normal pattern. We'll see. We'll see. But anyways, as I say, my brain is kind of leaving me. So with that, we'll see if there's any more fishies in the pond, any more fishies in the deep blue sea. Oh, look, there's a fishy there. And with that, we'll call it a day and talk to you folks tomorrow.